Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay.
Welcome to another episode of Pit Lane Parlay. My name is host Mike Jokum. Frank Santoroski joins me again as we discuss another lost and former INDYCAR track. This week discussing the former Chicago Motor Speedway, also known as Sportsman's Park. So, Frank, thanks for joining. And where do you want to start, man?
Well, like a lot of the tracks we've done have these long, rich histories. Chicago Motor Speedway, unfortunately, only had 4 seasons of racing. It's widely known as one of the most monumental failures, honestly. And there's a number of things that contribute to that. But let's just start with the construction of the track. So, Sportsman's Park was a horse racing facility, and it's located right next to the Hawthorne Racecourse. Okay, so they had these 2 very nice horse racing facilities that operated side by side for years. Hawthorne had the larger events. That the Illinois Derby was held in Hawthorne. And Sportsman Park eventually, they started phasing racing out of there, and a guy named Chip Ganassi, with some other partners there, bought up the property. Chip wanted to put a racetrack there. Chicago was a bit of an untapped market for racing at the time. I mean, you've got probably the closest racing in Chicago you had then was, say, Milwaukee, or even Elkhart Lake is not that awful far from Chicago, but nothing there in Chicago proper. So Chip got the idea that he'd like to own a racetrack. I mean, Roger Penske owned a racetrack. We all know that Chip's always trying to keep up with Roger. So $70 million later, they've got a beautiful track built right over Sportsman's Park. Now the profile of the track was nearly exactly the same as the profile of the horse race course. Very flat, long straightaways, tight turns, 1 mile oval paperclip shape. Say you took Martinsville and just expanded it, double the size of it. That's pretty much what Chicago Motor Speedway looked like. But it was nice. They did it up very nicely. 67,000 permanent seats. All the seats were very nice and cushy. They had like a little club section of seats there. They had nice little displays in the under the grandstands. It wasn't anything super spectacular, but it was nice and it was adequate, and they had traffic in and out wasn't bad. It just, unfortunately, the racing was not that great. It was processional. It was hard to pass on the tight little turns there. It was prone to yellows because guys would try to pass where there really wasn't a lot of room. There were a lot of yellows there, so the racing wasn't great. But the first year they had the inaugural, they called it the Target Grand Prix, was 1999 when the track opened. They actually sold it out. Target as a company did a nice job with activation, getting the word out about the Chicago Grand Prix. So they opened up to a nice big crowd. But over the next 3 years, those crowds got smaller and smaller every year.
Now, from what I was able to find, and there's surprisingly a very little amount of information about the track, considering it's not that long ago that it shut down. It looks like Jacques Lazier won maybe 1 year, and Sam Hornish won the final race there. If anything else on race winners.
Yeah, you're on the wrong.
Oh, I'm on the wrong Chicago. I'm on Chicago Speedway. Ignore me, guys.
The four kart races run there were won by Montoya. Won the first one there. Then D'Amata won. Kenny Brack won the third one, and then D'Amata won the final race there in 2002. They also hosted Indy Lights. There were 2 Indy Lights races. Both of those were won by this guy you may have heard of. Scott
Never heard of him.
And those were never. Yeah, no. He's so low key, you know. They also hosted trucks, NASCAR trucks up there for 2 seasons, and some like a Midwest AMA type cars there. They didn't have a ton of events there, but like I said, their marquee event was the kart series. Actually, I kind of look back on Racing Reference. I kind of, in my mind, I remember that last race, D'Amata just totally, being unpassable and dominating the whole race. But as I look back on it, actually, there were quite a few more lead changes than I thought, and D'Amata didn't lead as many laps as I thought. So maybe, because D'Amata was so dominant that season, maybe some of my memories have become mixed up. But I just do remember the racing being very processional. And I went to all 4 events there because it was not that far from me. But some of the problems with the track were, so they put it there right next to the horse racing course, right? The location is about 20 minutes outside of Chicago. So you've got prime, lots of traffic area. On the other side of Hawthorne Race Course, right, is this facility called the Cicero Waste Management Transfer
Oh boy.
Station.
Okay.
and behind that is the Chicago Sanitary Ship Canal. And then there's another large factory kind of thing right there. So when you're driving up to the race course, there's just this industrial stench that hangs in the air. It hangs in the air so thick you can almost feel it. You know what I mean? And as I recall, it wasn't quite as bad once I got into the track. But driving in and being in the parking lot, I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be a long weekend. So that wasn't very pleasant for the fan experience, But certainly, what are you going to do? You're going to move the sanitary waste station. I mean, you put your track there to begin with, and I guess it never bothered the horse racing folks there. They've been racing there at Hawthorne for decades and decades. So, but that was a bit of an issue. And then the other big piece that kind of hurt the track was timing. They built this track they broke ground in late '97. They opened it up in '99. At that point in time, CART still believed they had the superior product to the IRL. Well, they did. They did have the superior product to the IRL, and they had the bigger teams, the drivers. But as we all know, that dynamic began to shift. Just a few years later. It was 2002 when Penske moved his team over, and then Michael and Ganassi moved their teams over as well. So the CART lost a lot of its luster right after, immediately after they opened the track. I mean, it was they opened the track in '99. The following year, Chip took Juan to Indianapolis, won the Indy 500, which that is the impetus that started the bug to get all the other car owners to say, yes, we need to get back to Indianapolis. So Chip kind of shot himself in the foot with that one. Then the other unfortunate timing issue was the track in Joliet opened up in 2001. Joliet was built by SMI, which is a partner corporation with NASCAR. They were immediately granted a NASCAR date before the track was even open. And Joliet is about 45 minutes from Cicero. So these tracks are quite close together, and they're both in the surrounding Chicago area, both south of Chicago. The track at Joliet was a 1.5 mile, what they call a cookie cutter. It's another Texas, it's another Charlotte, it's another Atlanta, but it produced great racing. The IRL INDYCARs were immediately granted a date, and they put on fantastic races there. And if you try to look up the IRL's closest finishes of all time and see how many of them happened at Chicago, how many times you had 3 and 4 guys dicing for the lead, you can see that the racing product here at Joliet, or what they call Chicagoland, was much better than anything that was going on at the old Sportsman Park at Chip's place. So, 4 full seasons of racing, and then the track closed. So, and they ended up selling the property back to the city at a loss. So they bought the property, put $70 million into it, and then sold the property back at a loss. So a monumental failure.
Yeah, I remember the Chicagoland races growing up were always fantastic. There were some Sam Hornish battles there a couple times. If you go, there's a YouTube video, like the top 10 closest finishes in IndyCar history. I think 4 or 5 out of the top 10 are all at Chicagoland. I don't really remember anything from Chicago Motor Speedway off the top of my head.
No, I guess, yeah, it was. So Chicago Motor Speedway, although there's not a lot written about it, and there's not even a lot of photos or articles or great things about it, but it is forever memorialized on
Yes,
film
I was just
because
about to
the
ask
movie
that.
Driven, yeah, the movie Driven, which is another monumental failure. This is a film that cost $94 million to make, and as of last year, the box office, even including DVD and rentals and streaming all the way up till now, the film has only grossed 52 million out of the 94 million took to make. So another monumental failure there. But there were big chunks of the movie, including the opening racing sequence, filmed at Chicago. And I know people hate that film and they love to just crap on it. And I know the film lacks a good continuity editor. It lacks a good acting coach. You know what I mean? It lacks a coherent storyline. But there's some of the racing sequences are in there. The ones that aren't over the top crashes are actually quite good. That opening sequence where you've got the Jimmy Bly character racing against the Bo Brandenburg character, who they tried to make him like Kimmy. He's the cold German racing one another at Chicago. It's a pretty good scene. It's a pretty good scene to open the movie. Of course, the movie goes downhill from there. But again, so these are two monumental failures, forever linked and forever memorialized on film. So there you go.
Yeah, that's I always I know it was filmed there, but I never really think about it. And then when you and I were talking about what track to cover next, and I was looking at it, I'm like, oh man, why just Driven? Like, I almost forgot what Driven was. I guess that's probably a good thing though.
I don't know how you forget it. Somebody brings it up on social media at least, once every 3 months. Somebody says, "Oh, have you seen this film?" And then everyone has to, chime in. The first thing they want to do is call it dribble, and pick on it. So, yeah, I mean, but golly, how could you go wrong? You got Stallone,
Yeah, that's fair.
Stallone and Joe Tanto. But my God, some of the I pull my DVD out about once a year to watch it just for laughs. But like I said, there are parts of that film that I really like. There are parts of that film that are really neat. Then there are parts of the film that are so unbelievably stupid that shake my head. Why did I put this DVD in again? But so like you always want to know what you can see of the track now.
Yes.
Nothing. They sold that property back to the Hawthorne Race Course. The horse racing track is still there, still runs, still beautifully manicured. But instead of having the racetrack next to it, there's a giant beverage distributor. I mean, this building is huge. Right next to there is a Super Walmart. Now, it's for contrast, you know how big a Super Walmart is, right?
Insane.
The beverage distributor is twice the size of the Walmart. If you just like get on Google Maps, look at the satellite view. And then there's a trucking school on the other side of that. So there's not a bit you can make out of where the track used to be. They, like I said, they sold the track back to the city in, I want to say 2006. They began demolishing it shortly afterwards. And by 2009, there was no trace of it left. And so you're talking 10 years from opening day with 67 fans there cheering on Juan Montoya. 10 years later, nothing left. Only memories.
Does anybody out there, or did anybody out there ever speak positively of Chicago Motor Speedway, or for the most part, it was a pretty dull place?
I mean, there were guys that like it. I mean, D'Amato won there twice. Dixon won there twice in Indy Lights. And I mean, if you think about it, Dixon was running Indy Lights, and Ganassi owned that track, and somehow Ganassi noticed Dixon somewhere. I don't know if Ganassi noticed Dixon at Chicago Motor Speedway, but it was certainly quite a bit of a possibility that is maybe the first time Scott caught Chip's eye, driver there. And there's a couple of fans out there. Every now and again, you find somebody in one of the kart groups that'll post an old photo from Chicago or a ticket from Chicago. Or I posted a picture of me and Bobby Rahal that was taken at Chicago, and a couple of people commented immediately, "Oh, Chicago Motor Speedway, I went to the races there." Yeah, because there were a lot of folks that went there, and Chicago's it's right in the Midwest where there are a lot of INDYCAR fans. So there are people that have fond memories of going to the races there. But I don't think I've ever come across a soul that said, "Man, that was a great race I saw there." But I know folks that say, "Man, I had a great time there."
Right.
Where
Right.
that was a great location for a racetrack. So, I mean, it's not all hate, and like I say, if you ever miss it, pop in your DVD of Driven.
I don't know if I have the DVD, but I do own it. I think it's on one of my computers somewhere. Anyway, so Frank, thanks again for the information there on Chicago Motor Speedway. I, as always, will put a picture of the track as our show art here, so you guys can check it out, and I'll put the Wikipedia link so you can read what little is written about the track. Maybe I'll put Driven as the picture. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can probably find a picture of the driven cars at Chicago. Yeah.
So I will do that. I hope everybody enjoyed another one. We will probably do another one of these in the next couple weeks, most likely. So be on the lookout. But Frank, thanks for joining me very much. And guys, I hope you enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate you folks that listen to us.
Yeah, thank you.